with the state-based system. I grew up in New Zealand where there's one government in one country and, if there's a public holiday, the whole country has it kind of thing. So here in Australia, it's like each state government almost has more swing than the federal or national government does. So
welcome to the Table Talk podcast, where we get real, meeting with industry professionals and experts in the chiropractic world, talking about the newest and latest, how to scale your practice, the struggles that we all face in practice, and how you can take your practice to the next level. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I have someone who I have had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years now, been able to be in accountability groups with and really grow as a chiropractor with. I have Dr. Tim Leeming on with me today, and he is a chiropractor in Australia with Being Chiropractic Studio. Dr. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to connect over a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Doc, we were talking a little bit before, and the whole point of this is to really, show the underbelly of what happens as a chiropractic entrepreneur, business owner, doctor, family man. I know you got a couple of kids and wife at home, and so really, as we jump in, I just want you to share, a little bit about, kind of your journey and what really makes you tick, when it comes to tick.
Yeah, that's right. There's a bit going on here, but I know there's a lot of other incredible docs out there doing it. So, as you said, we've currently got Being Chiropractic Studio, which has definitely been my, third baby or kind of, labor of love and life over the last couple of years. So, we've got the studio with 2 associates there. We've got a big team of CAs. It was bigger. And interestingly, despite how it might appear on social media and all of that, without the rose tinted glasses, last year, the first year as Being Chiropractic Studio, was a really challenging year. But previous to that, I'm in my 6th year as a chiropractor, after graduating. And previous to that, I had a few really solid, amazing strength to strength, couldn't stop growing kind of years. So I probably went into the big transition into recreating our practice definitely with some naivety, but also, a strong positive outlook that everything would be great and could be great and was only going to keep getting better. So the last year was some big learning curves, which we got through, thanks to, the teacher of the School of Hard Knocks, life, but also some great mentors, great friends, an incredible family and team around me. But yeah, previous to that, I was in a practice, the same practice that I currently own, Being Chiropractic, was previously had a different name, and a good buddy and I bought the practice together a few years ago, and it went really well. And then our business partnership split up, so I took over sole ownership, and it continued to go really well. And then this opportunity to get out of the lease on the current building and to buy another building just across town, where we're in like a small rural town, came up. And so that was where the opportunity to completely rebrand and recreate it from somebody else's baby and somebody else's business, which was great, into my own thing. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but
no, I think you did. I mean, and I think that kind of to the point of why we're doing this is to talk about the good, talk about the bad, talk about the things that you've learned. And so I want to go back to when you came out of school. Did you work as an associate, or did you buy the practice right away?
Yeah, so came out of school, studied in New Zealand, which is where I grew up. And at the New Zealand College is where I met my now wife, Casey. And we, at the end of college, we were a little bit at a loss as to what to do. Do we stay in New Zealand and look for a job here? Do we go home to the part of Australia where she grew up, which is where we are currently now? But neither of those ideas jumped at us too much. So kind of randomly, we moved to Adelaide, South Australia, which, as it so happened, one of my best mates was already living and working there. So we took a quick trip to Adelaide one weekend in our final year of college, and we met with a bunch of different docs and opportunities. And I took on an associateship there. So I stayed there for, I did about 2 years as an associate coming out. I had a fantastic principal chiropractor, Dr. Mario Stefano, still have a great relationship with him. I could pick up the phone anytime and call him to ask questions and chat. But then the practice we brought up here in Queensland, actually, thanks to Mario, came into our line of sight. And so, yeah, 2 years as an associate, and then a short locum, a 3-month locum for a doc here in Queensland, and then purchased the practice with my buddy at the time.
And so, you know, you've kind of run the gambit: associate, partnered in a practice, now owning a practice. Tell me, I mean, owning a practice with a partner. So, would people listen to this? My goal is that they're always taking something from this. And so what lessons did you learn as working with a business partner, another chiropractor in a practice?
Yeah, so I learned a lot of things. So for example, thanks to going into it so that I went into business with my best mate, which obviously a lot of people would warn against. And to be fair, there are certainly things we could have done better. And when it did split up, let's call it, it was a bit of a testing time for our relationship. But as one of my great mentors said, like, if there's any true depth to your friendship will stand the test of time over this challenge that you're having right now. And he was right. It absolutely did. But I learned a lot about, let's call it, the mechanics of buying a practice and all that comes with assessing how well that practice is running, what sort of metrics or things should I be looking at, how to manage the finances of buying and or selling a practice, who gets what sums of money, etc. And then, of course, how to run the practice. So that was all super beneficial because my mate who I bought the practice with had already bought a practice before himself, so he'd been through it. And so I was definitely the green one in the equation. But what we probably didn't do so well, that I learned I would do better next time, was just set up. We probably didn't nurture our business relationship as well as we should. We should have met more often. We were living in separate states, but we still should have had a more structured way of managing our relationship, because in the end, as I imagine often happens, I think for both parties, but for me as well, like, frustration started coming up that I should have addressed earlier, and maybe would have, had we had a better structure in place for meeting more often, and an agenda on how to bring those things up. But eventually, as well as that, the reason that we ended up going separate ways was just because the world actually was changing. Like, we bought that practice at the start of COVID, and the two of us had plans to have ourselves and our families together in the same part of Australia eventually, or pretty soon, and it just started to look like that wasn't going to happen, and the original plans we set up on weren't going in that direction. So yeah, I learned that it's super important. Like any relationship, there needs to be open communication. There needs to be structures in place to communicate in a safe and open way, where you heard, and also to have in place those contingency plans for, okay, what's going to happen if we do decide to change our plans or go separate ways? How do we manage that? Just having that all down on paper. I mean, this is pretty elementary stuff. It's probably not news to anybody, but you dive in with your best mate, and that stuff kind of just gets, that's all good.
Rose-colored glasses, right?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a number of business partners along the way, and what I've found is it's just like even when there's nothing to really meet about, there's always something to meet about. You know, somebody's got something that they want to talk about or discuss or whatever it may be. And so you bought your practice or your business partner out, and
Yep.
we were cranking. The office has been cranking at that point a little bit, and then COVID happens, and I know that Australia
Well,
was a
actually, the timeline was COVID happened right as he and I bought the practice together. So at the beginning of 2020 was when I moved, was when I was just finishing my second year in practice as an associate, moved up, and literally the settlement date was like, it was in like April that year that COVID kicked off. So we actually were, I don't know, lucky enough or worked hard enough that through COVID we grew, as you've probably heard a lot of solid practices did.
Yep.
So it was kind of everybody was kind of bored and over COVID by the time I ended up buying them out and moving on. So yeah, that was the timeline of that.
So tell me, what I mean, for those that are here in the United States, obviously, we've got a picture of what we hear kind of through the grapevine as far as what's happening in Australia at times. But tell me about that, what it was like at that time, for you guys, and kind of what the response was.
Yeah, it was frustrating. It was scary. It was uncertain. The response, it was also a great opportunity for Australian chiropractors or those who think the way that we do about the way that the world works and what health is and what it isn't. It was a great opportunity for us to band together and connect in ways like this over Zoom on digital meetings and things like that. It was in Australia with the state-based system. I grew up in New Zealand where like, yeah, there's one government in one country and, if there's a public holiday, the whole country has it kind of thing. So here in Australia, it's like each state government almost has more swing than the federal or national government does. So it kind of happened at different stages in different states. And so I actually had quite I guess, a unique role for and with chiropractors in Australia at the time, working alongside Baron Hoig from the Chiropractic Defense Council based in the US. He and I kind of linked arms and did our best to help Australian chiropractors. And so we're putting out fires at different times throughout the timeline because, things would kick off in Victoria and then it got bad in Western Australia. And then everybody thought, oh, things are going great in New South Wales down in Sydney there. And then Sydney kicked off later in the piece. So, and then our good friends over in New Zealand, which is obviously where I'm from. So it, yeah, just like I guess it was in the US, times were dark, gloomy, scary. You felt isolated at times, and it was important that we stuck together. But what we learned was that there was just so much fear mongering, scare tactics. Um, we were mandated to get the COVID jab and make all of our staff do it, and there was just these there were kind of ways you could get yourself an exemption from it, and people were taking different pathways to avoid what they, felt was their right to avoid. And but at the end of the day, nobody came knocking. Like down in Victoria, there was a bit of that. It was wild. I think you probably understand that Melbourne was like the most locked down city in the world, like more days than anywhere else. And there quite literally were people coming knocking down there, South Australia as well. But it was largely just smoke and mirrors. There was really no kind of bang behind their showcase of showing up and scaring docs and practice managers and CAs. And up here in Queensland, there was literally none of it. Like, we just stuck it out, waited it out, kept loving and serving our people. Our practice almost became like a bit of a safe place where people come in and take their mask off. So yeah, that's how it was. I don't know that it was, much more unique or crazy or different to the US or other parts of the world.
And so with some of the things that you and Baron were doing, I mean, what were the things that you, I mean, I've been involved politically in the state of Illinois on working on our state association board for a while, and I've learned a lot about, greasing the wheel, so to speak. And what were the biggest things that you learned in that process?
Well, what comes to mind when you ask that question is actually probably a little less mechanical and maybe a little bit more esoteric, shall we say. But it's like, the problem is never the problem. It's how we perceive or feel about the problem that dictates how much pain and suffering there is. And so really, the more that we were able to help people feel like it was going to be okay, and unfeel the fear and shit that was going on for them because of what they'd heard and seen out there. And that was that power of coming together and banding together. And so the way, if I get into the mechanics of that, the way that we did help people to feel like there was a light at the end of the tunnel was to let them know, hey, don't worry, I'm not following the rules either. And I'm standing strong here and we're okay. So there was that sense of, okay, other people are having success doing this. I'm not the only one. But we also, through the resources of the CDC and through, obviously, I think Australian chiropractors became the biggest membership within the CDC. There was close to 1,000 at a point where the CDC had maybe somewhere between 2,000 and 3,500 people. 1,000 of them were Australians. So we grew the membership here. And with those resources, we were able to get legal help through a couple of really good legal firms. And Baron and I, man, we interviewed a lot of legal experts because, as you would know, at that time, that brought out everybody. Common law experts, retired barristers. It was just, we had to really wade our way through a lot of interesting characters. But anyway, coming back to your question. So we got legal advice, we got legal support, so that when there were some door knocking, which happened in such a small percentage of cases, we were able to help those chiropractors to feel like they had backing and support, and quite literally write the letters for them and answer the questions. And at the end of the day, nobody got wrung out. Nobody got hung up, or despite how many knocks on the door or, people coming through their practice. So yeah, we just help people to feel different about it, to help them know that they were supported, and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that this is crazy, it is mayhem, and there's no logic to it.
Well, and I think that there's an important point there that I know this is one of the things that it's like chiropractic as a whole has been very tribal. And I've noticed this, having known a number of docs from Australia at this point through the things that I've done in the profession, is that like you guys are a very tight-knit group in Australia. And that it's different than it is here in the United States, where it's all like very splintered, whether it's the technique that I do or the type of practice that I have, or the this or the that, or I'm a part of this group or I'm a part of that group. And like, but even like with you guys, I've seen it almost seems like even though you might be a part of different things, like you guys are all still very, tight knit, so to speak.
Man, you should check out the New Zealand crew. They're even more tight knit, thanks to the fact that they've just got one university or college there that teaches chiropractic. So, and they don't have that state-based situation like I mentioned before. But yeah, I guess here in Australia, part of what makes it seem that way from the outside maybe is just population and demographics. Like it is, what, 10 times smaller than the US in terms of population. Now, there's still division here. There's still a more like mechanistic end of the profession who are just, clicking their heels at trying to be buddy with the GP or medical doctor down the road, or want to wear a white coat and just rub and tape and needle stuff all day. And then at the other end, there's more of the vitalistic subluxation based crew. So there definitely is some division here, but yeah, I guess it is easier to get together and more or less sing from the same song sheet, with it being a smaller group. And there's just been less opportunity over the years, or there's been less of like people going out and setting up their own association. I know there's a bunch of different associations in there in the US and in parts of Europe. So yeah, I would say in Australia there's probably two camps, the mechanistic and the vitalistic, but it's your typical bell curve thing. There's like 10 or 20% of hardcore at one end and hardcore at the other. But in the middle, there's just a lot of people who are open-minded or don't feel overly strongly about one or the other, and are just your classic, awesome, loving, compassionate, empathetic, heart-based, service-based chiropractors.
Yeah. And that's, it's funny you say that, because like in the United States, there's like two associations in every state, plus your two national associations. Then it's like there's 1,000 groups that you could be a part of, and so yeah. But so moving out of COVID, things are cranking in the practice. We're bringing on associates. So I know that you said you have two associates, one senior, one junior. Shout out Dr. Mike. Tell me about the things that you learned bringing on associates. And I was looking at your website, and it looks like you've got like seven CAs or something like that. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, that end of things, growing, bringing new team on, things you've learned, things that you've taken away from that.
The interesting thing about that is my method to getting associates. So I can't even call it a method, because that would make it sound like it was intentional. But I've been very lucky. I've never had to advertise for, or even look for, or ask for an associate. And granted, I'm at the very beginning of being a principal chiropractor who works with associates, but it first started with Dr. Adam Sheriff, who basically he is at heart, he's a principal chiro himself, a previous owner of practices himself, and he was just moving interstate with his family up to this part of the world. And he came to me and said, look, I'm going to buy a small practice and build it up. In the meantime, do you want me to come and work a couple of shifts for you? So that was cool. He was my first associate, and he at heart
That's not a bad first associate.
yeah. So Adam and I, with relative ease, just exploded the practice by probably another 30 to 35% within 3 to 6 months. So, we took a practice. I was adjusting nearly, between 380 to 400 a week on my own, in just 4 days or 6 shifts. And so Adam stepped in, I handed a shift to him, and he opened up a couple of shifts, and very quickly we had the practice, up between 500 and 530. So, no chiro math there. Those are bang on the numbers that we were seeing. So that was cool. That was very easy. And then as Adam's small practice that he'd purchased was growing quickly, he was ready to step away. And for my other two associates, so Adam was, I guess, replaced by Dr. Mike, who's a senior associate as well, who was doing the same thing. He was moving interstate with his family. So the opportunity was there for him, which was great. And my junior associate, shout out to Dr. Lydia. She is a legend. And she just had, she came and observed me in practice in her final year, did her placement with me in her final year as a student, and just kind of, I shouldn't say balls, but had the constitution to say, right, I want to work with you. And I said, cool, I respect that. So took her on. So I've never had to advertise or anything like that, but I guess I was watching a video by Dr. Tony Ebel the other day, and he was explaining, I think that at PwC there in the US, they're about to hire their 9th associate. And he was answering this question. And he said that it's got nothing to do with the contract or the systems or the structure or what you're going to pay them. It's all to do with the culture. And so what I feel we have done well at being and at CFC as it was before is just build a really great culture that people can see and feel through our social media, and through the way that we as a team show up to the seminars and stuff around Australia, because we do a lot of that, which is part of the culture. We train, and we have a strong family culture within the team. And so that culture is magnetic. It's based upon a purpose, a strong vision and mission and direction that we're heading. And so people want to jump onto that mission and join us. So if there's anything I've learned about having associates is that one of the most powerful ways to attract them is to just be on a big, powerful, purposeful mission that is exciting to others.
I cannot agree with that more. Like, hit the like button, hit the love button, because those things take time, right? It takes, in your head what you want, but I feel like sometimes you have to just sit down, pen and paper in hand, cup of coffee in the morning, on a vacation, whatever it may be, and you have to put that on paper, right? I was the Benjamin Franklin quote, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And it's like taking that heart of service, like you talked about, and putting that to paper to like clearly articulate that and then put it into action. I think that's where a lot of people miss, with building culture and building, a practice like yours, where it is magnetic.
Yeah. And I think so, as well as that, so that's probably something that, even though we went through a lot of struggle and challenge last year with the move and the rebrand and the new building and taking on associates and me learning some very acute and quick lessons in how to be a principal chiropractor with multiple associates. My team was with me through those struggles and challenges. And as any family does, they grow through challenge. So even though the stats and the numbers and the performance metrics of last year were nowhere near where we wanted them to be, we stuck together as a team. And our core team through that are still with me now. And so we've grown through that, and that fortifies that family culture and that business culture. So yeah, that's been fantastic. Probably the other thing as well, and this is a big part of my intention or mission as a chiropractor, is elevating the chiropractic experience for everybody involved. So that includes me, the chiropractor, my team, that includes inside my house, my building, my practice, so to speak, but also for our community, our patients, our practice members. It just absolutely shits me looking at these, and I say this with love, firm love, tough love, looking at these chiropractic offices these days that are still just these beat up old buildings with these dogged, fading pieces of chiropractic education artwork and a photo of a family from 1987 running on the beach, with Times New Roman font explaining how chiropractic is great. Like, we have to move forward and move with the times. We have so that elevated chiropractic experience, and this is why I invested so much in having such a beautiful, modernized fit out for our practice and branding and our website, as you mentioned. Like, we're wanting to take chiropractic forward because there are so many other distractions out there. There are so many other beautiful, shiny things that are pulling people away from what they ought to be doing and coming to see us in our studios and practices. And so it is absolutely incumbent upon us to elevate the experience that our people are getting by coming to our practice. And that starts in-house, like I said, with our team. But I think that is also, to answer your question about what have I learned about getting associates or growing a team, is like creating a space where it's like, shit, yeah, I want to work there. Like, it might be a little bit of a more superficial element to growing a team. Like, yeah, that's a nice building and a nice space, and they have new stuff, But I think that that's valid in our day and age.
No, I think it's super important. I mean, it's an investment into, the cult. Like, I can remember one time I was playing the music that I like to listen to in my practice, right? Like, for me, my practice was always like, this is my happy place. Like, I get up Monday morning and go to work. Like, not like I have to go to work, like I get to. And I had someone say, I don't like your music. You should change your music. I'm like, well, it might not be the place for you because the music's not going to change. This is who we are here, and like understanding that not everyone is a fit for your tribe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I often say to my team, the people that we turn away are just as important as the people that we keep, because that those people not being there also contributes to the vibration of it all. But yeah, I just wanted to create a space where people literally click to our website or walk in our door and they're already like, wow, yeah, this is cool. I want to be part of this.
I was
Before
impressed when
the
I
word.
when I took a look. Yeah. So you've got three associate, or you and two associates. You've got a team. What are the things that you do, to keep it lively, to keep it fun, to keep building that culture, for team and, your patient base?
Yeah, so we're still putting this together with respect to how we do it for our community and our patient base. But as a team, we meet and train every week. We go away to every year, we do like a weekend team immersion or retreat where we just go away and we go deep on our vision, mission, values, and we do some deep work on the practice, but we also do some work on ourselves and some self-care and self-love and just team bonding and hanging out. So we do that every year. That's coming up next month. We also try to get away to at least one big like weekend seminar as a team each year. So yeah, we're just constantly connecting outside of the business hours to work on ourselves and therefore work on the business. But it starts right at the beginning with the onboarding of potential new hires. Like, we're pretty clear and upfront with what our practice vision, mission, and values are. And so that's a really good, coming back to that quote of the people you keep versus the people you turn away. Like, that's a great, place to kind of recognize who's going to be one of us and who's not. And that then either sustains or disrupts the culture. So there's that with the team. And then with our community or patient base, we are, doing our very best to get better and better with our social media presence, because, like it or not, that's where people hang out these days more than they hang out in malls and parks and all of that. Everybody's hanging out online. So we're trying to build up our presence there, which, I mean, you know this better than most with what you're doing now. It's a tricky tricky space to thrive or flourish in, but it helps having a team member who's dedicated to that. But how else do we grow that culture for our community? We like to get out in the community often. So spinal screenings, being present at careers expos and things like that for the kids, night markets. We put on events at the practice around, topics of holistic health. I mean, none of this is groundbreaking stuff, but it's probably just that we're consistent. We keep showing up. We're always there in front of the community in some way or another.
And I think it's like anything, right? Those two things I think go further in not only just being a chiropractor, but just being a human being and being a part of your community. It's showing up and being consistent. Like if you have someone who shows up and is consistent everywhere, it's going to return itself. It's going to show through in every way, right? Even if that person maybe isn't ready to become a patient of Dr. Tim's, well, they met Dr. Tim, and so they're referring their friends and their family and doing that. And they see your social media posts or your ads or whatever. And it's like that consistent message across all platforms, internal, external, and digital, has an amazing impact just on growth in a practice.
And it can take time. Like I've alluded a couple of times on this call to the challenges we had last year, and the challenges started with, well, it first started with me way over capitalizing on the building purchase and the fit out. So just a classic case of overspending. Put my hand up there. So I've had to grovel my way back out of that, but we're getting there. But it also started with, and again, this is something you'd have some expertise in, was, we changed our name, which meant we changed our domain name, our URL for our website, even though we tried to migrate the SEO over. But we also changed our location. So I did not know, I didn't learn this till late last year, that affects your Google SEO as well, as changing your physical address. And so we went from being a really well-trusted business in the community to, it would appear, kind of losing some ground there, a fair bit of ground and traction. And it's literally taken until about now, maybe the last 8 to 12 weeks. So it took over 14 months to really finally get back up to a level of traction. At around the same time, literally moved into our old building was another chiropractor who are from a group who own multiple practices around the country. Great people doing good things. I know the owner, but they're strong with their digital and SEO. So, there was the introduction of that competition to our market as well. And so that was a steep learning curve in amongst a lot of other things last year. And it, to what you've said, that consistency has taken us well over a year, even though we were an established business. So it's got to be sustainable, whatever you're doing.
Well, Doc, I think that is some seriously amazing content, but I always end with the same question with everyone, which is, what is something that you haven't figured out that you're still working on right now?
Oh man, there's so much. We are working on trying to make our practice more of an internal referrals based practice, which, man, the numbers don't lie. And it's funny, I reckon there's a lot of business owners, particularly chiropractors out there, who might think that they're largely referral based. But if you actually went and crunched your numbers, which again, fortunately, a lot of docs aren't doing or doing very well. So yeah, we're working really hard on how to be less reliant on ads and those, as we all know, the best quality leads are the internally referred ones. What else are we working on? I'm also just working on, what did we all learn through that COVID shitstorm? It's like on a personal level and a business level, how can I be better prepared next time? How can I know you're aware of the book, Profit First, and the concepts around that. The coaching group we were in would talk about it a lot, but they talk about having, your FU money, which is like, how could I just be so well prepared that me and my family are safe no matter what happens? but also how can I future-proof my business so that if that kind of thing does happen, or I shouldn't say if, when that happens again, how can I just smoothly transition into a slightly more lean version of ourselves so that my beautiful team and their families are still well looked after and they have a place of work and an income stream, because they're just an extension of my family, right? So that's what I'm working on, is how do I future-proof this? Because, depending on what you read, there might be more of that coming sooner than we'd like to think. So it's just having that future side on strengthening the practice, and how do we make it more and more valuable to our community, so that as hardship does come for our community, they know that we are of massive benefit to them, rather than one of the first things to go on their list of expenses. So those are a couple of things that I'm always tinkering with and working on, and it's all an awesome part of the fun.
Awesome. Well, Doc, thanks so much for being on. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Doc. Good to see you, man.
You too. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this episode of Table Talk, a chiropractic podcast, make sure that you subscribe and check out the links below to our free Facebook group with chiropractic marketing secrets, our free resource guides, and the links to all of the guests that we have here on the show and ways to be able to connect with them. Thanks and God bless.